Hey everyone, welcome back to Eric's Everyday Watches. As always, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. So the watch we're looking at today, I picked up online from a store in LA, California called Pass the Watch. Now I want to point out that they are not a sponsor of my channel, and the link that I'm providing is not an affiliate link. That is why you did not see one of those paid promotional graphics pop up on screen. Pass the Watch is simply a site that I've purchased a handful of watches from in recent years, and I've always had a good experience. I've always found their prices to be extremely competitive, and they offer free shipping. So I'll add a link to their site in the description below. Now for a little context in this video, Pass the Watch is currently selling this model for $155. So the watch we're looking at today is the Seiko 5 SNZG13, and it has been out for a little while. In fact, there's a newer version of this watch out, and that would be the Seiko SRP-G27. Now I'll mention the key differences between the two and why I personally prefer this one. It comes in what I believe must be Seiko's older packaging, and I quite like it. This outer sleeve has a die-cut window that shows off the Seiko logo in its metallic color, and that's surrounded by a debossed window frame pattern. Under that, we have this dark blue box that has a suede texture feel to it. And removing that, we see the watch on a white leather pillow with the Seiko logo on it. Now, some people would say that this box feels dated. I, for one, however, call it classic. And I think it's a welcome change from the current white packaging that Seiko does now. That's right, we're going to keep it classy in Minnesota today. The case, bezel, and strap are all 316 stainless steel. This watch primarily has a brushed finish to it. The top of the case is brushed, as is the bezel. However, the side of the case, and the side of the bracelet for that matter, is a high polish. Seeing how this is a military-inspired field watch, an over amount of high polishing would feel out of place. Seiko did, however, manage to sneak in a little more high polish in a very subtle way. If you look closely at the side of the bezel, where it meets the case, that 2mm area has a high polish on it. The same is true for that flat 1mm area on the top of the bezel. Like I said, very subtle. The edges and corners of the case are nicely rounded off and are smooth to the touch. Now, one thing I did notice during my everyday use of this watch is that the brushing on the lugs and the brushing on the end links are not done in the same direction. Because of this, depending on the light you look at it in, the case and the bracelet sometimes appear to be a slightly different color. You know, it's a small thing, but it's worth noting. I know that could really bother some people. On the back of the watch, there is an exhibition screw-down case back. Personally, I question having an exhibition case back on an automatic watch because the router tends to block the view, and I'm not sure how much there is to actually see. But be the judge for yourself, and you decide if there's enough going on here for you. Personally, I am easily entertained by shiny objects and things that spin, but sadly, this is not enough going on for me. That movement inside is Seiko's 7S36 movement, and this is the first of the main differences between this watch and the newer version. This movement has 23 jewels. It does not hack, and it does not hand wind. It is also rated for a -20 to a +40 accuracy per day, so far less accurate than Seiko's newer movement. Personally, I am less concerned about the accuracy of the movement than I am about the lack of hand winding. My general thought is if I need a watch that I know is going to be dead on accurate, I'll grab one of my solar watches in my collection for that day. Having to do the Seiko shuffle because there's no hand winding in this watch was my main hesitation. Surprisingly, it turned out not to be that big a deal during my testing. The slightest movement seems to get this watch running, and I had no issues with it continuing to run all day while sitting at my desk. On the plus side for this movement, it does have a quick date set feature. There's a 43-hour power reserve, and it beats at 21,600 beats per hour, meaning the sweeping second hand moves 6 times for every second. The crown at the 3 o'clock position is 6 millimeters in width and 3 millimeters in depth, which seems appropriate for this size of case. It is a simple push-pull crown. The first position adjusts the day and date, while the second position adjusts the time. The day and date window is outlined in white and is very legible. It somehow does not distract from the watch, but rather draws your eye to that area when you're wanting to read the day and date. Now let's talk about what I consider the best part about this watch, the dial. Starting with that raised internal bezel, it just screams, "Look at me," and it demands your attention. This is the second key difference between this model and the newer version. That raised internal bezel with the large tick marks really sets the stage. Those 5-minute tick marks are just so thick and bold. The contrast between them and the black background are hard not to look at, especially at night once you realize those 5-minute tick marks are loomed. The pencil-shaped hands are outlined in white and are also filled with Seiko's LumiBrite. One detail to note here is the loom is only on the minute-hour hands and the 5-minute ticks. There is no loom on the Arabic numbers. The overall dial has a very clean aesthetic to it, with the only color other than white and black being used is a spot of red on the tip of the second hand. There is a second set of Arabic numbers for military time. The Seiko logo and the shield below it are applied, with the word sports being printed on the dial. If you look extremely close at that shield, you'll notice it's not simply just filled with white, but rather it's a series of horizontal white lines. And quite honestly, this is something that I expect the majority of people would never notice. It's really only apparent if you happen to be taking a close-up photo of the dial in sunlight. Yet knowing this and the fact that Seiko still produced it like this makes me like the watch all that much more. Because the idea that they'd put this much detail in a place where 90+% of the people would never notice it speaks to the attention of detail on this watch. Moving down the dial, at the 6 o'clock position, there are the words automatic, 23 joules, and 100 meters printed on the dial. Let's talk about the metal bracelet on this watch. It's 22 millimeters at the lugs and tapers down to 20 millimeters at the clasp. The clasp has a fold-over safety push-button release with the Seiko logo on it, and it is a pressed clasp. The best part about this bracelet, and the third most important difference between this and the newer model, is that this clasp comes with 4 micro adjustments, as opposed to 2 on the newer version. The bracelet feels like a decent quality for this price point. The end links of the watch are hollow. Now, in everyday use with this watch, I did have an issue. When I first got it, there was a rattling noise, and it appeared to be coming from both the clasp as well as the end links where it connects with the watch. In any mass-produced product, there's bound to be a certain percentage with some problems, and I've had this issue once before. So I simply took some graphite powder and applied it to the holes in the bracelet where all the pins are, and thankfully, this took care of the noise. Squeak, be gone. Now let's go over the specs of this watch. It has the Hardlex crystal, Seiko's 7S36 movement. The diameter is 42 millimeters with a thickness of 12 millimeters. The lug width is 22 millimeters and there's a lug-to-lug distance of 49 millimeters. Now let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons again. For pros, of course, that dial with the raised internal bezel and that black and white high contrast. There's also the legibility, both the time and the day and date. And of course, the clasp has 4 micro adjustments, so you know you're going to get a good fit. And in my opinion, this is just a nicer looking watch than the newer model. Now for cons, this older movement does not have hand winding, and that would be a convenience. Also, there's that exhibition case back. I just don't see the value in it. You see what I did there? You see what I did? Yeah. Now, initially, I bought this watch simply to review, but it has quickly become one of my favorites. And this watch is definitely going into my personal collection. This has been Eric from Eric's Everyday Watches, reminding you, buy the watch that you love. And don't pay any attention to what anybody else says or thinks. This is your watch collection. If you like this video, if you find it helpful in any way, please do me a favor and hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.